Hello to all my beautiful Virgos. I'm really happy we get to sit together again in this quiet little space today. Lately, I've been feeling a lot of shifts happening in Virgo energy. Not necessarily huge changes on the outside, but more like something inside of you has been growing tired after holding everything together for way too long. It feels like there's something Virgo doesn't want to carry anymore. A certain pressure, an old way of thinking, or that constant feeling that everything has to stay under control all the time. And honestly, this feels like the kind of energy that's slowly beginning to leave your life as we move through the end of this season and into a different emotional space. So if you're new here, welcome. I'm really glad our paths crossed today. Now let's just gently open this space together and take a quiet look at what's trying to heal inside of Virgo right now. There's something I've been feeling very strongly in Virgo energy lately, and it's a kind of exhaustion that's hard to explain. Not the kind that comes from simply doing too much. It's the kind of exhaustion that builds up when your mind never really gets a chance to rest. Even in the quietest moments, there's still a part of you trying to hold everything together. You're sitting in your familiar room. Most of the lights are already off. Your phone is face down on the table. And outside the window, only a few late-night lights are still glowing. But your mind keeps going, still replaying that conversation from earlier. Still wondering if you said the wrong thing. Still trying to fix a problem that hasn't even happened yet. And honestly, I think a lot of Virgos have lived this way for a very long time. That feeling of always needing to keep everything stable, your emotions stable, your work stable, the people around you stable. And sometimes, you become so strong for everyone else that nobody notices how exhausted you really are. The Devil card comes through here, but not in a dramatic or frightening way. It feels more like being trapped inside your own repeated thought patterns. Like Virgo knows rest is necessary, but still feels guilty for slowing down. You know you're overwhelmed. Yet somehow you still try to finish one more thing just so your mind can feel a little more at ease. A lot of people look at Virgo and think you have everything under control. But they don't see the quiet pressure living underneath that. The pressure that tells you to prepare for everything, to think 10 steps ahead, to solve problems before they even arrive. And over time, Virgo starts living in a state where true relaxation almost feels unfamiliar. I really feel like many Virgos have been carrying this energy for far too long. Maybe you're still handling your responsibilities every day, still answering messages, still going to work, still showing up for people with kindness. But deep down, there's a part of you that's tired in a way words don't always reach. Like you're constantly holding tension in your body, just trying to keep your life from falling out of orbit. And the saddest part is, Virgo may have gotten so used to this feeling that it started to seem normal. The Eight of Swords card carries the feeling of someone constantly searching for an exit inside their own mind. The more you think, the more things there seem to be to fix. There are nights when Virgo goes to bed late simply because the mind refuses to quiet down. One thought leads to another, and suddenly you're replaying old memories, thinking about the things you wish you had done better, the things you still haven't figured out, the things you're still trying to control. And honestly, I don't think what exhausts Virgo the most is the outside world. I think it's the feeling that you have to carry responsibility for everything. Other people's emotions, the stability of relationships, whether life is moving in the right direction or not. There are moments when Virgo just wants to sit still for a while, but even during rest, your mind keeps working. That's why this energy feels less like a sudden breakthrough and more like a very slow release. Quiet, subtle, not dramatic at all. Just Virgo beginning to realize not everything needs to be fixed. Not every silence is a problem. Not every slowdown means something is falling apart. And honestly, I think your body's been trying to say this for a long time. Through restless nights. Through the exhaustion that hits after an ordinary day. Through the moments when you've become quieter than usual. There's a part of you that simply wants to breathe again. Not to abandon responsibility, but to stop living in a constant state of tension. I feel like Virgo has spent so much time being the stable one that you may have forgotten what it feels like to lean on something yourself. You're the one who keeps everything organized, the one who remembers every detail, the one quietly solving problems before anyone else even notices them. But sometimes that same strength makes it hard for Virgo to let go. And maybe this is one of the first times in a long while where you're beginning to realize you don't want to live this way forever. Not because Virgo is becoming weak, but because you're slowly understanding that real peace doesn't come from perfectly controlling everything. It comes from allowing yourself to soften a little, allowing yourself to not have every answer immediately, allowing imperfect things to exist without rushing to fix them. And I think that's what this energy is gently teaching Virgo right now. That sometimes healing begins the moment you stop trying to repair everything. And when the room grows quieter at the end of the night, Virgo may slowly begin to realize the thing that's been exhausting you all this time was never really the outside world. It was the fact that you never truly gave yourself permission to rest on the inside. I think there was a period in Virgo's life where you became so used to always being okay. Okay, so other people wouldn't worry. Okay, so work wouldn't fall apart. Okay, so everything could keep running the way it was supposed to. And slowly, Virgo started hiding your exhaustion even from yourself. There were feelings you never fully named. You just carried them quietly. Like the cup of coffee that's been sitting cold on the table for hours without you noticing. Or the phone buzzing one more time close to midnight, and Virgo instinctively reaching for it right away. Not because you truly want to, but because you've gotten used to responding to everything, always being available, always understanding, always being the reliable one in the room. And honestly, I feel like many Virgos have lived in people-pleasing energy for so long without even realizing it. Not in an obvious way, not in the sense of constantly trying to impress people, but in the quiet way of pressuring yourself to become the version of you that makes everyone else feel comfortable. You notice people's emotions quickly. You remember the little things. You can tell when someone's hurting, even when they never say a word. But sometimes, Virgo forgets to ask yourself if you're okay too. The moon card comes through here like still water in the middle of the night, calm on the surface. But underneath, there are so many emotions that haven't really been touched yet. I think Virgo has always been strong in a very quiet way. You're not the kind of person who talks openly about everything you're carrying. Usually, you just keep pushing a little longer, and then a little longer after that, until eventually the body starts speaking for the emotions. Sleepless nights. Feeling drained even when you haven't done that much. Sitting in the middle of an ordinary day, but feeling strangely empty inside. There are moments when Virgo looks around and quietly wonders, why have I tried so hard for so long and still don't feel lighter? And honestly, I think the answer may be this. You became so focused on fixing everything outside of yourself that you forgot the inner part of you needed care too. The Justice card carries a very quiet energy here, not judgment. More like the moment Virgo begins being honest with yourself again. Honest about the fact that you can't carry everything forever. Honest about the fact that you have limits too. Honest about the fact that some relationships only stay peaceful when you force yourself to hold everything together. And maybe the hardest thing for Virgo isn't letting go of other people. Maybe it's letting go of the version of yourself that always feels like it has to be perfect. I can feel that very strongly in this energy. Virgo always wants to do things well. Not because you're trying to be better than anyone else, but because part of you worries that if you loosen your grip for even a second, everything will start falling out of place. So you keep trying, keep fixing, keep thinking. Even when your mind is so tired, it just wants silence for a little while. There are nights when Virgo leaves the window open for a long time, just listening to the wind or distant traffic outside. Not because you love the noise, but because sometimes complete silence makes the thoughts inside your head feel even louder. And I think this is the moment Virgo begins seeing things you may have avoided for a very long time. That not everyone is asking you to be this strong. Not everyone expects perfection from you. A lot of the pressure may have come from getting too used to being the person who keeps everything stable. And when you hold that role for too long, you start forgetting what it feels like to soften without guilt. But this is what I really love about the energies surrounding Virgo right now. You're slowly becoming aware of that, very slowly, very quietly. Like the first light appearing outside the balcony just before sunrise. Nobody notices it immediately, but the darkness has already started becoming softer. And I don't think this kind of change happens overnight. It feels more like Virgo learning how to sit with yourself without immediately trying to fix every emotion that appears. Learning to answer a few messages later than usual. Letting some things stay unfinished for a while. Allowing yourself to rest without needing a good enough reason for it. And honestly, I think the most beautiful part of this healing process is that Virgo is no longer trying to become somebody else. You're slowly returning to the version of yourself that existed before all the pressure became too heavy. The version of you who still knows how to care for others without abandoning yourself in the process. The version of you who doesn't have to constantly struggle just to feel worthy. And as the night grows quieter, Virgo may slowly begin to realize something. That the peace you've been searching for all this time may never have been about controlling everything perfectly. It may have been waiting for you in the moment you finally stop fighting your own emotions. And I think that's exactly why Virgo has been craving more quiet lately. Not because you hate people, and not because you want to disappear from the world. It's just that after spending so long carrying so much, Virgo is starting to feel tired of the noise itself. The constant vibration of notifications, conversations that don't really mean anything, crowded places, energies that make you feel like you always have to stay alert just to keep up. There are days when Virgo simply wants to come home early, take a hot shower, put on something soft and oversized, sit quietly in a room lit by warm yellow light, and not have to answer anyone anymore for the rest of the night. The Hermit card comes through here very strongly, not as isolation, not as coldness, more like someone who's finally slowing down long enough to hear their own inner voice after years of only listening to the noise around them. Virgo is the kind of person who absorbs energy very easily. If you stay around someone anxious for too long, your nervous system starts carrying that tension too. If you live in an environment that's constantly rushing, Virgo's mind naturally shifts into survival mode where it feels like it always has to stay active. And honestly, the hardest part is that you often don't realize how overwhelmed you are until your body starts slowing down for you. The sleepless nights become more frequent. There are moments when you feel exhausted but still can't fall asleep. You lie there in the dark, hearing the fan running, cars moving somewhere far outside, and your mind quietly drifts back into thinking about life again. Thinking about yourself, the past few years, how hard you've tried for so long. And I think some Virgos are beginning to realize lately that they don't really want to keep living at the same pace anymore. Not wanting to force yourself to stay productive all the time, always replying immediately, always being strong, always being emotionally available for everyone else. And honestly, that's not weakness. It may simply be a sign that part of you is asking to heal. The Four of Swords card carries the feeling of a quiet room after a very long day, no interruptions, just Virgo and silence. I think Virgo has gotten used to using thoughts to solve emotions. But some emotions don't actually need to be solved right away. Sometimes they just need to be heard. There are small sadnesses Virgo has ignored for a very long time. Moments of disappointment where you still smiled and said, "It's okay." Moments of exhaustion where you still pushed yourself a little further. And over time, everything slowly started building up inside of you. That's why this period feels important, even if it's slower than usual, even if it feels quiet, even if not much seems to be happening on the outside. Because for the first time in a very long while, Virgo is no longer running away from yourself. I feel like you're beginning to reconnect with very small things again. A quieter morning. A song that softens your heart a little. Turning your phone off earlier than usual. Standing outside on the balcony just to breathe for a moment. And maybe those things sound small. But for Virgo, they feel like the body finally relaxing after living in defense mode for far too long. The High Priestess card appears very gently in this energy. Like Virgo's intuition is becoming clearer as the noise around you starts fading down. You begin to notice what drains your energy, what creates anxiety inside you, what genuinely brings you peace. It's no longer about forcing yourself to fit into everything around you. It feels more like Virgo is quietly returning home to yourself. And honestly, I think healing sometimes has very little to do with becoming a better or more perfect version of yourself. Sometimes it's simply the moment you stop fighting yourself all the time. Stop forcing yourself to always be strong. Stop judging yourself for feeling tired. Stop believing rest is wasted time. There are nights when Virgo just sits in silence for a long while, doing absolutely nothing. And strangely enough, those quiet moments may be the moments where you hear yourself more clearly than ever before. You start hearing what your heart has been trying to say for a long time. You begin realizing what you actually need. You finally notice the exhaustion that used to stay hidden beneath routines, responsibilities, and expectations. And honestly, this feels like a very quiet kind of transformation. Not dramatic. Not something that needs an audience. Just Virgo slowly becoming softer with yourself a little more each day. Allowing yourself to rest without guilt. Allowing yourself to step away from conversations that drain you. Allowing yourself to stop explaining everything to everyone. And maybe the most beautiful part of this season is that Virgo is learning how to be alone without feeling lonely anymore. Because once silence no longer feels frightening, that may be the moment you truly begin returning to yourself again. And I think the more Virgo begins turning inward, the more your perspective on life slowly starts to change too. Things that once caused you so much anxiety don't seem to feel quite as heavy anymore. Not because Virgo has become emotionally numb, but because you're beginning to understand that not every battle is yours to step into. And honestly, this feels like a very quiet kind of maturity. It doesn't come from reading endless healing advice. And it doesn't come from trying to become a better version of yourself either. It comes from everything Virgo has silently lived through. The seasons where nobody really understood you. The moments when you had to carry emotions that were difficult even to name. The nights spent alone in the dim kitchen light, hearing nothing but water boiling or rain tapping softly outside the window. There are pains Virgo never fully explained to anyone, but somehow, those experiences created a very different kind of depth inside of you. And I think that's the energy the Strength card is bringing through right now. Not strength that comes from forcing yourself to hold it together. More like the calmness that appears after surviving years of inner chaos. Virgo doesn't react to things the same way anymore. You start choosing peace over arguments, distance over exhausting explanations, rest over forcing yourself to keep pushing. And what's beautiful is, the softer Virgo becomes with yourself, the gentler you become with other people too. Not in the people-pleasing kind of way, but in the kind of way that comes from truly understanding what exhaustion feels like. I feel like many Virgos now can recognize sadness in people very quickly. They don't even have to say much. You notice it in their eyes, their silence, the way they answer more slowly than usual. Because Virgo understands what it looks like when someone is trying to seem okay while quietly falling apart inside. And sometimes, the people who have walked through the deepest darkness become the ones who know how to carry light in the softest possible way. The Queen of Pentacles card carries such a warm feeling here. Like a small, peaceful home late in the afternoon, the smell of hot tea, soft music playing somewhere in the background. Nothing has to be perfect, but somehow it still makes people feel safe the moment they walk in. And honestly, I think Virgo is slowly becoming that kind of energy. No longer needing to prove anything, no longer needing to speak so much. Just your presence alone makes people feel like they can finally breathe. And the beautiful part is that peace didn't come from books. It came from every moment you had to pull yourself back up again. So now, when someone opens their heart to Virgo, you don't listen in a surface level way anymore. You listen through experience, through empathy, through a heart that has been hurt deeply before, but still learned how to soften again. And honestly, that feels like a very rare kind of wisdom. Quiet, grounded, mature. Not the kind that constantly gives advice, but the kind that makes people feel they don't have to pretend to be strong around you. I think some Virgos have started realizing lately that they no longer want to live life at full speed all the time. You begin noticing smaller things, a comforting meal, a quieter afternoon, a weekend where you don't feel pressured to chase after something. It's almost like after years of living in survival mode, Virgo is finally realizing that life isn't only about fixing everything. It's also about feeling truly alive inside yourself again. The Star card appears very gently in this energy, like the light outside the window just before sunrise. Not harsh, not dramatic, but enough to remind you that the darkness isn't as heavy as it once was. And I think Virgo is beginning to see yourself differently because of that. Not only through your mistakes, not only through pressure or self-criticism, you're beginning to realize how far you've actually come, how much you've endured without giving up, how much you've grown through seasons that were never easy. And even though Virgo isn't always the kind of person who openly talks about pain, it still shows up quietly in the way you move through the world. Virgo's kindness was never born from having an easy life. It came from understanding what hardship feels like. So now, when you sit quietly in your familiar room at the end of the night, Virgo may begin noticing something very strange. That maybe all the things that once hurt you deeply have slowly been turning into wisdom. Not cold wisdom, not distant wisdom, but the kind that softens your heart, slows you down, and teaches you how to love yourself a little more gently after everything you've been through. And I think this is the moment a different version of Virgo quietly begins to emerge. Not loudly, not in a way that needs to announce itself to the world. You just slowly stop wanting to live the way you used to. There was a time when Virgo felt like you always had to move fast, fast enough not to fall behind, fast enough to prove you were good enough, fast enough to keep life from slipping out of control. And honestly, that kind of living can make a person forget what real peace even feels like. There were days when Virgo accomplished so much and still ended the night feeling empty inside. Almost like you became so used to constantly moving forward that somewhere along the way, you stopped asking yourself where you were even trying to go. But lately, I feel that energy beginning to shift, very slowly. Like a room that's been cluttered for years, finally being cleaned out one quiet corner at a time. Virgo is starting to see life more simply now, not feeling the need to control everything anymore. Not needing every single thing to happen quickly just to feel safe. Things that once made you anxious now feel a little easier to leave alone for a while. Not because Virgo is losing ambition, but because you're beginning to understand that a sustainable life cannot be built on constant exhaustion. The Temperance card carries such a soft feeling here, like making a cup of hot tea early in the morning, while the air outside is still cold and the world hasn't fully woken up yet. No rushing, no pressure, just a quiet sense of a balance slowly returning inside of you. And honestly, I think Virgo is learning how to live that way now, moving a little slower, listening to your body more carefully, not forcing yourself to stay productive every second of the day. Maybe you've started paying more attention to your sleep, to nourishing yourself better, to making time for things that genuinely allow your mind to rest. And those changes may seem very small, but sometimes real healing begins in ordinary moments like these. One night where work no longer follows you into bed. One day where you don't criticize yourself quite as much. One quiet moment where Virgo looks into the mirror and no longer sees only flaws. And honestly, I think this is a kind of abundance Virgo rarely noticed before. Not the kind that comes from having endless things to prove your worth, but the kind that comes from finally having enough space inside yourself to breathe. The Ace of Pentacles card feels like a steady little seed in this energy. It doesn't need to grow overnight. It doesn't need to impress anyone. It simply needs to be planted in peaceful ground, and it will naturally grow in its own time. And honestly, Virgo feels very much like that right now too. You no longer want to build your life entirely around pressure. You no longer want to constantly exhaust yourself just to feel worthy. Some Virgos may even notice lately that they enjoy staying home more, smaller conversations, cleaning a quiet little corner of the room, opening the windows to let sunlight in, playing soft music while working. Everything feels softer than it used to. And the beautiful thing is, Virgo no longer sees softness as weakness anymore. You're beginning to understand that peace is not something you have to earn. It's something that appears when you stop being at war with yourself all the time. The Star card is still present in this energy, but this time it doesn't feel tied to some huge expectation. It feels more like the last bit of light remaining in a room at the end of the night, very soft, very still, but enough for Virgo to realize your heart no longer feels as dark as it once did. And honestly, after everything you've lived through, I think Virgo is slowly learning how to exist without constantly bracing yourself for survival. You're beginning to let life unfold more naturally, allowing yourself to rest when you're tired, allowing yourself to change your mind, allowing imperfect things to exist without needing to fix them immediately. And maybe one of the most mature lessons Virgo is learning right now is that your value was never measured by how much pain you could endure. It's reflected more in the way you still managed to stay kind after all the times you felt exhausted inside. So if Virgo has felt quieter lately, slower lately, more drawn toward a different way of living, maybe that isn't confusion at all. Maybe it's simply the gentle arrival of a more peaceful version of yourself. And when the night grows still, when the noise outside finally softens, Virgo may slowly begin to realize something. That what you've truly been searching for all this time was never a perfect life. It was a life where your heart could finally rest. And maybe that's what Virgo has quietly been searching for a very long time. Not to become more perfect, not to become better than everyone else. Just the feeling of waking up one morning without carrying so much pressure to be someone different. And honestly, I think Virgo may have spent so much time trying to hold everything together that somewhere along the way, you forgot you deserve gentleness too. But the beautiful thing is, even after all the exhaustion, Virgo never truly lost that very special light inside of you. It's still there, in the kindness you offer other people, in the quiet ways you notice small things, in the way you still try to keep your heart soft even after experiencing things that could have easily made you close yourself off from the world. And maybe this season of life isn't really about becoming a completely new person. Maybe it's simply about slowing down long enough to remember who you were before all the pressure settled so heavily onto your life. I've always felt that the strongest people are rarely the ones who never get tired. They're usually the people who become exhausted and still somehow learn how to be gentle with themselves one more time. So if Virgo has been moving through a season like this lately, pulling inward a little more, learning how to live more slowly, trying to reconnect with some quiet sense of peace inside, I honestly wonder what has been helping your heart feel even a little lighter these days. And if you enjoy spaces like this, these slow conversations where we can quietly sit with ourselves for a while, I'd really love for you to stay here with me for the next videos too. For now, just let the night soften around you very slowly, and let the rest of this story settle gently inside your heart for a little while longer.